Gerald McCoy is not going to be a Brown. He's going to go to the Panthers, but who needs him? And at least he's not going to the Ravens. The big news that we're jumping to now is the drama with Duke Johnson. Does he want to be here? Does he want to be traded? Are they going to trade him? Lots of big questions here at Cleveland Browns minicamp. Drew, let's start it off with you here. If they do trade Duke Johnson, do you think that's going to be the biggest loss compared to Gerald McCoy?
Well, the team never had Gerald McCoy, right? So it's sort of hard to quantify that. I think Gerald McCoy is the better player. If I had to pick one of those guys for one season, it would certainly be Gerald McCoy. But yeah, I mean, Duke is an asset to the team. Eric said it on a podcast this season. It's something that I wrote down as well. He was the best player on a 1-31 team. That's not a shot at Duke Johnson. He was the best player on a really, really, really bad team, and so that was his taste of the NFL. His taste of the NFL is catching 75 passes a year, and that has become his expectation now, is from what I can tell, and that's not reality anymore. The team is so much better than it was then, and you're not going to get that kind of opportunity. Last season when they were a little better, even in the beginning of the year, he didn't have that kind of opportunity. And towards the end, he operated more like any other third down back in the league, which is what he is. 201 yards rushing, 429 yards receiving, 47 passes. He did score 3 touchdowns with catching the ball. He's still a good third down running back. He's an excellent receiver. There's a place for Duke Johnson on 32 teams in the NFL. No questions asked. He's a good player. I'd certainly like to have him, especially, because Kareem Hunt won't be available for the first 8 weeks of the season. So there's a backup running back job available, and he can, get those 5-8 carries a game that Nick Chubb doesn't get. So there's a role for Duke Johnson on this team. And it's not the role that he wants, because it's not the role that he had his first 2 years in the league. And he wants to go to a place where he can, touch the ball 120 times. And I don't think that's the reality of the NFL. I just don't. I don't think that any team is going to be that bad where Duke Johnson touches the ball 120 times a season.
Yeah, I laugh. Like 1-31.
Yeah.
That seems so far ago.
That does,
Like,
right?
that seems like a different team.
Yeah.
Eric, what do you think? Do you think we're going to forget about Duke Johnson, forget about Gerald McCoy just as quickly?
Well, I definitely had this written down, that same point that Drew had said is, Gerald McCoy isn't a loss because he wasn't on the team. Now, I will say his reserves for him, I'm a little more worried about than at the running back position. I think you can get a guy off the scrap heap and kind of get by for the first 8 weeks as a backup. Knock on wood, everything's okay with Nick Chubb. But, the backups, we got Carl Davis, Deborah Lawrence. Trevon Coley had some moments. Doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in that group. Again, maybe one of these guys can flash. Maybe some undrafted rookie guy can come and help out. But likely it's going to be Sheldon Richardson and Larry Ogunjobi, which are 2 solid players. I know they're going to probably move some fronts around, maybe only have 3 guys down, or maybe use 3 defensive ends on passing situations. But, you like Gerald McCoy for depth. So I understand the revenge factor, but I don't get it. I don't think the Panthers are a better team than the Browns, but to each their own. I'm not terribly upset. I'm a little bummed, but I'll get over it. Duke Johnson, he came across as extremely selfish. It's literally what only cares about yourself. You'd rather be on a 1-31 if you're the featured player, as opposed to a team that has a chance to win, make the playoffs, and make some noise in the playoffs, and just be a spot guy. So, if he stays on the team, I'll support him if he does well. But he's, knowing Browns fans, he's going to be public enemy number 1 for as long as he's here.
It's tough to come back from the trading block. Just ask anyone in the Los Angeles Lakers not named LeBron James.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I liked the Cleveland Browns YouTube account. They had an interview with Myles Garrett up. I think he handled all the questions well when it comes to Gerald McCoy, saying that he is excited about all the other additions that the Browns have. He's talking about Olivier Vernon, Sheldon Richardson. Good to see Ogunjobi, commenting on he's healthy, he's going to be ready to play. Excited to see what Myles Garrett's going to bring this year.
Absolutely.
He definitely he's handled those questions like a veteran, and he's looking like he's going to be ready to play.
Yep. I can't wait.
Get some fun stuff with that defensive line. But minicamp is in full swing here. And a couple of different storylines that are popping up. One of the big ones is OBJ is in camp. And that comes to our first question here. If you look at the wide receivers, there's an injury with Jarvis. OBJ's in camp. And then we also heard some good things about Antonio Callaway during OTAs. Whose attendance do you think is the most important for minicamp this week of those three wide receivers? Eric, let's go to you first here.
I'm going to go with Antonio Callaway. Strictly being the other two are established veterans. They've kind of gone through the routine a lot more than Callaway has, and the age-old expression that the biggest improvement is shown between years 1 and 2. So Callaway, came on a little slow last year, had a couple good catches against the Raiders, kind of did really nothing, and then had a couple good games at the end of the season. So I think he can build off that. Getting in practice and getting the rapport down with Baker more than, a couple passes every game is really going to help him out. Right now, he's slotted as the number 3, I would say, receiving option. I don't think he's going to overtake Jarvis, at least not right now. But having Jarvis sidelined, at least for the time being, and maybe shifting him up a spot against better corners, against Greedy Williams or Denzel Ward, should really help him out. He was the guy that was known strictly as the go runner, the fade guy, and I'd like to see what he can do and run some slants, run some curls, do some other routes that can make him more attainable for this offense. So that being said, I'd say Antonio Callaway.
Drew?
Yeah, I think it's the right answer. Antonio Callaway is only 22 years old. He's younger than a lot of the rookies that came in through the 2019 class. And this is also a guy that didn't play a lot in college through, some discretions or misdiscretions of his own, indiscretions of his own. But I'll give a different viewpoint, and I'll say Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry is sort of the alpha. He's the guy that everyone else in that room looks up to. He was probably the main factor in turning that culture around from a culture of just complete losers to a culture of do whatever you have to do to get yourself in a position to win this game. That shit contagious, bro. And so,
Steal my line, dang it.
If he were to have skipped, the message would have been that this isn't important at all. When you're Odell Beckham Jr. and you're the best player in the league at your position, and you're 26 years old and you've put in your time, and you've been traded to a new team, you want to take some time for yourself, you've earned that right. When you're a multi-time Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player. But you're not the guy right now that everybody looks up to in that room. That's Jarvis Landry. He was here last year. He's the guy that has the rapport with all those players. So if it is important for him to be there because he is the leader of that room still.
All right, Drew, coming back to you here. There was news out of OTAs. Austin Corbett wasn't getting too many snaps with the first team. Greedy Williams had a good OTA performance. Who do you think is going to get more starts in the upcoming season, Austin Corbett or Greedy Williams?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Because on the one hand, I think Terrance Mitchell is a better player at his position than Eric Kush is at his. And that's not a knock on Eric Kush. He's one of the best pass blocking guards in the league. He was one of the top, I think, 10 best offensive guard pass blockers. So he's a good pass blocker. He leaves some to be desired in the run game. But he can play, but Terrance Mitchell is a much better player. On the flip side, Greedy Williams, I think, is a better player than Austin Corbett. So what do I think happens? I think Greedy Williams starts at boundary corner, which is one of their 2 starting cornerback spots. I think he does start and very early on in the year, and I think he plays all year. From what we saw, if Austin Corbett was supposed to be the starter, I think he would have received those reps if they thought that he was ready. But we shouldn't read too much into that. This is OTAs. There's no pads. There's no actual blocking. There's no real hitting. It's just trying to instill some things, and they might have wanted to get him some looks at center, which is where he was playing. It might be a position that they're asking him to develop for versatility. So I think they both start a lot, but I like Greedy Williams to start most of the games this year, so I'll go with him.
Eric?
I'm going to take the opposite approach and say if this was 1 year down the road, I would definitely say hands down Greedy Williams. But the fact that he's a rookie, I think they're going to manage his playing time a little bit early on. That's not to say he's not going to start every game, but I think he'll start maybe in the nickel role or in passing sub situations until they feel confident that he can be in every down corner, overtaking TJ Carey, overtaking Terrance Mitchell. Another guy I had heard on the offensive line is underachieving former St. Edward star Kyle Kalis, who his career really went off the rails after he went to that team up north. What a terrible decision that was, losing all 4 years to Ohio State. That being said, I guess he's been playing he's been playing somewhat well, at least that's what I've heard at OTA. So, he was an undrafted guy. If him and Cush are battling for backup roles, I really don't think that they would be fighting for starting roles. I would hope that Corbett could fend both of them off. That's a depth that we're showing across this offensive line. So I'm going to take Corbett starting more often. I think he can hold off those 2 guys. And Greedy, I think he's going to start at least half the season, if not 3/4. If he, wows the team, maybe be an opening day starter. But as this team continues to get better and better, unless you are a complete, bona fide one of the best players of your spot, you're not going to be starting as a rookie the way we've had to for many, many years.
Oh, I thought you were going to go certified G and a bona fide stud, and you can't teach that.
Yes. All right, I thought we traded away all of our Michigan players. That's disappointing. All right, so let's we do have a Buckeye who's going to play really well for us this year, and that's Denzel Ward. And another draft pick from the previous season, Nick Chubb. I think everyone has high expectations for both of those players. But Eric, what do you see for the coming year? Who is going to actually improve upon their rookie season?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question because both of them had pretty solid rookie years. So I do appreciate the question coming my way. If you can recall both their rookie seasons, Chubb kind of heated up as the year went on. That also happened. They had to trade a guy for that to occur because our former coach only put him in a handful of snaps and gave him 3 carries or less on the first couple weeks.
2?
Whereas, yeah, exactly. Whereas Denzel Ward started off hot, 2 interceptions to Big Ben, and then had a couple injuries to end the season. But he also finished with the Pro Bowl entry, I believe. So, looking at where we ended last season, I would say who would improve more would be Nick Chubb would be Denzel Ward because he was kind of quiet in that second half. So I think he, also having Greedy Williams, their teams are not going to definitely go away from his side. They have another, bona fide guy opposite him. So teams are going to have to throw his way at some point. And, I expect some big plays on his side. The only counter argument that I might take away from Drew is that Nick Chubb is going to be the man the first half of the season.
Let me answer the question, man.
Drew, Drew, Eric, Can you answer this question, please? Who's going to be better next season?
Nick Chubb, because he gets to be the man for the first half of the season.
Okay.
No, I mean Denzel Ward made the Pro Bowl as a rookie, right? I mean, how much better do you want him to get?
Yeah.
I understand he had some injuries and he couldn't play the whole season, and you'd like for him, to shore up his tackling form so he sort of avoids those big hits and the tackling technique that led to some of those hits. I'd certainly like for him to stay healthy, but if he's healthy, he's one of the best cornerbacks. He's one of the top 3 cornerbacks in the NFL already. So I think Nick Chubb has more room to improve, not in the type of player he is, but in the type of production that the team sees, because there was a guy that held him back, that prevented him from being the type of player that he's capable of being for the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. So I think that you'll see more production out of Nick in year 2 than you saw than you will Denzel. I think his level of production will be his same elite level, and hopefully he gets more opportunities with a better pass rush.
Well, it's been fun to get some Browns news here in June, early June here. So we'll keep watching on the Duke Johnson situations. Should be interesting with him asking for a trade, even though he is showing up to minicamp. So we'll keep a close eye on that. The other thing we're keeping a close eye on is the Indians as they go up and down and up and down. They go to the White Sox. They lose 3-4. And then tonight, right before we start, they beat the first place Twins. So who knows what to expect from this team. So we have a couple of some more quick hitters here that, we still haven't found the right lineup, or there's some guys who are coming off injury, some guys who can't hit at anything. I'm struggling for a saying there.
I did like how you called it quick hitters, not good hitters, because this is obviously about the Indians.
So we're still trying to figure out the outfield, and we'll see what happens with. There's already been some rumors about should the Indians start looking at some trades, some scary trades out there, and we'll get into that into a second here. But we're going to play a little game called Trade, Demote, or Start. I'm going to give you guys 3 names. Okay. You've got to pick out of those 3 names who should be traded, who should be demoted, and who should be in the starting lineup. So the first group of players that we're going to go with here is Greg Allen, Leonys Martín, and Jake Bowers. Eric, trade, demote, or start?
Well, I'll try to be very quick on this. The first guy I really liked when he came up, started his career out pretty decently. Thought he was a good fielder, covered a lot of ground. Greg Allen batting 161, eight runs scored. 8 runs scored this year at 17 strikeouts. Never really got over the hump. Perhaps it could improve, but yeah, he's my trade. Demote would be Jake Bowers, batting 216, 5 home runs. He's never eclipsed a 300 batting average, so I think he's kind of plateaued. I can't imagine him getting too much better, but he's better than Greg Allen is the only reason why he's not my trade guy. And then so
you're demoting Bowers.
Demoting Bowers, and I will start Leonys Martín. Also batting, ironically, 216. Has 7 home runs at least. He's a reliable outfielder. He's he's a veteran guy who can play center fielder. He's not great, but he's the best of the 3. So I'm going to take Leonys Martín as my start.
Drew. Trade, demote, start. Allen, Martín, Bowers.
I would trade. I don't know, man. Allen. I'm trying to think who could give me the most trade value, and it's I don't know. It's probably Allen. He's still a young guy. Maybe somebody sees some potential there. Maybe you get a decent prospect back. I'd probably stick with what he said.
Okay, I would trade Martín. I think.
Okay.
He's got a little bit more big league experience. Yeah. I think someone could look at him to step up for the second half of the season. Poor start here. All right, let's start with poor start to the regular season, poor start to trade, demote, start.
I think that's what you meant.
All right, Drew, we're coming back to you. This is your second chance here. Trade, demote, start. We're going with Jake Bowers, Jordan Luplow, and Tyler Naquin.
Oh man, you're really hitting me with the original New World Order here. I got is that which one of those guys would be Kevin Nash? I know for certain Jake Bowers is going to be Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and then we'll throw Scott Hall into that mix too, right? So, okay, I'm going to trade Naquin. He's batting .278. Maybe somebody's outfielder gets hurt and they need somebody that can come in and be a speed guy that can bat ninth in the American League. You could do worse if that's the case. Maybe you get back some type of, double A or hot shot single A prospect, maybe. So that's my goal there. I will start Jordan Luplow, I guess, from those two that I have left. He's batting .242, I guess. And then I'd be demoting Jake Bowers. The only thing I can say is his on-base percentage is .311, which is only a little bit behind Naquin, who's his .316. I'm going to count that, Austin .316. And so he's only 23 years old. Maybe demote him. Maybe he figures it out in Columbus and comes back ready to start at first base.
Man, that's the second demotion for Jake Bowers. All right, let's skip ahead here. Let's go to a juicier one. Trade, demote, and start. Eric, I'm going to go big name players here.
There you go.
José Ramírez, Trevor Bauer, Carlos Carrasco. Trade, demote, start.
Well, I'm gonna. They're all going to be unlikely or
I don't know if we can actually demote any of these players, but let's go ahead with it.
Argumentative. Okay. I'm going to say trade Carlos Carrasco. He's at an ERA of just under 5, 4.98. It's his worst since 2013. He's kind of gone down every year since 2016, but I guess you could say about a lot of Indians players. He's got 6 losses already this year, which is as many as he had all of 2017. He did have a couple of freak accidents here or there in the last couple of years. Broken finger, his back got tight on him. I think they could get somebody good for him. So, I think he's a pretty good trade chip. I would demote if you could. Trevor Bauer, sorry, Drew. ERA.
That's an outrage.
3.87. He's got a 4-5. It's 4-5. He's had winning records the last couple of years, so I'm not ready to, give up on him. But in this exercise, I am. His ERA has been about 4 the last couple of years, so he's not excellent. But he does
not
have
excellent? Now we're just gonna start telling lies.
He's not excellent. He's good. He's not great. He does have a lot of pitches. I do like his versatility. He can full batters, but he's been very underwhelming this year. Speaking of underwhelming, the guy who I want to take is José Ramírez. He's coming off of back-to-back All-Star appearances, 2 Silver Sluggers. He is slumping at 206. I just think he's got a bad stretch. I think he has nobody around him. He has Carlos Santana in our starting lineup, but we don't have Jay Bruce. We don't have Edwin Encarnacion. And these aren't even great players, but these are so much better athletes than what he's been surrounded by this year. I think he can improve upon his 4 home runs for this year. So, that's a guy I'm ready to ride with. He's still young, and I think he's going to have a good career still.
Okay, starting Jose. Drew, what are you going to do with Trevor Bauer?
I'm going to start Trevor Bauer. Are you kidding? That's ridiculous. He's excellent. He's great. He's everything Sonier said he's not. He's one of the best pitchers in the American League. He can throw 1,000 different pitches. He can throw it from 15 different arm angles. He's definitely who you start. This is ridiculous. So the question is, who do you trade? Who do you demote? And I will, I guess, it's essentially which one of these guys would I rather trade is the exercise, right? Because you can't really demote any of them. But let's pretend you could demote José Ramírez, who's still young, and you give him some at bats against AAA pitching, maybe get some of that swagger, that confidence back that he's had the last couple of years. I think that makes some sense. You could live in a fantasy world and do that, which by process of elimination leaves me with Cookie, who's left, and so. I guess you try to trade him. I think that he's still a very good pitcher, and that his value is still going to be very high. So you could still get some exceptional prospects back for him. So if we're looking at trading one of these guys, I think he's probably the target.
All right, let's move into the final promo. And this one is a pet peeve of mine after listening to a lot of the OTA news.
I don't blame you.
And that is the question, should OTAs be mandatory? I've really disliked this game of who's in OTAs, who's there, who's not. Why do we even have to play this game? Is there a solution that we can come to with the Players Association, the teams, the fans, the reporters? Can we figure out a way to define what attendance should be? Drew, let's start off with you here. What should we do with OTAs? There's so many people who care about these practices, including reporters. What the heck does the NFL do to make this a little bit easier?
RELAX, to borrow one of the worst beer chuggers quotes of all times. Just chill out, man. It doesn't matter. There's what, like 9, maybe 10 routes that an NFL wide receiver has to run, right? Full route tree, full spectrum. There's maybe 10. Which one of those routes do people think Odell Beckham Jr. forgot how to run between January and May? It's just relax.
Simplifying a bit.
It doesn't matter, right? Like, these things do not matter. The intent of these things, the intent of these team activities is to get the team together, to try to go over, what you want people working on, to introduce the new rookies to the team, to try to get some people on the same page, and just as like a little kumbaya team building stuff. So they do not matter at the end of the day. They are completely irrelevant as far as I can tell. And, they're there because the Players Association, in one of the few battles they've ever won with the NFL owners, said, we want optional team activities. And so they said, okay, you can have optional team activities that we expect you to show up for, right? But they don't get fined if they're not there. So just relax. It doesn't matter if Odell Beckham misses these. It doesn't matter if Tom Brady doesn't show up for these activities. That they're getting themselves ready to play. It might be a deal. It might be something worth talking about if, like, a second-year player decides he's too good for OTAs and doesn't want to show up. Maybe it's something you talk about in May for a little bit, but it's absurd that we're in the situation we are. I blame the Cleveland media for this. This is them trying to concoct a story when it's not there. The Boston media doesn't care that Tom Brady's not at OTAs. They just don't. When you're that good of a player like Odell Beckham, I'm not saying Odell Beckham's going to win 9 Super Bowls or whatever, but you get the right to not show up to these things. So, if you're asking me for a solution, I guess when the next collective bargaining agreement comes up, give up the optional team activities in exchange for ending the marijuana prohibition that the NFL has, so that the players can actively smoke, because I don't think it's a big deal. So that's my solution if you're asking for one. But I think what we can do is just stop caring that people are freaking out, because it's not a big deal.
Eric, do you have any other bargaining chips for the players here?
Well, first, I do appreciate your rant, and I'm on the same side. This is absolutely no reason that there should be a mandatory. What's next? Is film? Do you have to watch film? Is that mandatory? Do you have to lift weights within the premises of the facility? I mean, where does it end? This is ridiculous. I came up with 2 solutions, and I don't know how great they are, but there's two things I thought off the top of my head. They're both contract related. Will they get, based on the percentage of the number of attendances, they'll, get paid a certain amount, or there's escalators, bonuses. So they get more money, but they get taxed at a higher rate. So you got to look at that.
Oh, team accounting's MVP coming to play.
Is that a line used by IRS? I don't think so.
Accounting humor.
No, I mean, that would be the
accounting Hall of Fame there.
That'd be the only thing I could think of is, try to put something in there monetarily, but I don't think the owners could really do that. Kind of what Drew said, reporters really have nothing to talk about at this time of year, so they're trying to fabricate stories. And for whatever reason, this is the most important story for the Cleveland Browns media. It's really disappointing. I just told you guys before we got on, I was just watching a network, and they were covering the Browns, and they had like 18 things that they wanted to talk about before whether OBJ was here or not. It's not that hard. I mean, there are roughly 90 guys, 89 if you don't count OBJ, the things you could talk about. I mean, most people don't want to talk about the third string left guard, but there are other topics we can't talk about. Yeah. So I'm just looking forward to July till all these pieces of nonsense go away. But you know what? The guys that don't show up, they're foregoing their opportunity to, I guess, get better. I'm talking about guys like Duke Johnson, not necessarily Odell Beckham Jr., whereas potentially these up-and-coming guys can take their spots. So for one reason or another, I mean, somebody's going to benefit. So, it's just off-season training activities, but, somebody's maybe going to, do well and impress the coaches that could lead to an opportunity down the road.
I think that's sort of the crazy thing. I think it needs to be better defined. I was watching a video with running back coach Stump Mitchell, and he said, commenting on Duke Johnson not being there for OTAs, he said, if he's here, then he'll have an opportunity. But while he's not here, he's giving other guys an opportunity to show what they've got. So it's a message. It's saying, like, you need to be here, but it's not mandatory. So, like, just add one day on to minicamp, add an additional day on to a rookie camp or whatever it is earlier on. Just eliminate OTAs if this is going to be this whole rigmarole with mandatory or not, and coaches are going to call out the players, and the players say, that's not the bargaining agreement. Let's just have it well defined, and you're either there or you're not. And I think it would be a lot easier for players and not to have that guilt. But we're in minicamp. We'll be in training camp here later on, which is a lot of fun too. But we'll see what goes on with the rest of this week with the Browns, with the Indians, and we'll be doing a Cavs mock draft next week. So
nice.
Study some bowl film.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll talk again next week. And go Tribe.
All right. Go Tribe. Go Cleveland.